We are in a small residential area in the middle of Germany. It is the kind of neighborhood that can be found in pretty much every German city. Paved streets, houses with beautifully landscaped gardens, and signs reminding drivers that children play here. Nelly Graf lives with her family in just such a neighborhood. And it is in just such a neighborhood that she will disappear, in broad daylight. Today's case takes place in Halle, a small town in Westphalia in western Germany. Nelly Graf has 3 children. Natalie and Waldemar are already adults. Jens is still in school. Nelly works as a cashier at a nearby supermarket and is married to her husband, Victor, who works as a bus driver. The family lives together in a beautiful house. On Friday, October 14th, Nelly gets up at around 6:45 a.m. Her husband and 2 older children have already left the house. Her youngest son, Jens, and Nelly are alone. The 46-year-old makes her son's school lunch, which Jens packs before he also sets off for school. Nelly stays at home a little longer that morning. She has a doctor's appointment later and still has some time. When Jens leaves, his mother lies down on the sofa again and turns on the TV. Nelly walks to her doctor's appointment. On the way, she stops at a bank branch. A video camera at the ATM records her withdrawing a small amount of money at 9:14 a.m. From there, she continues on to her doctor's office at the train station. She's there from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. By chance, she meets her cousin in the waiting room of the doctor's office and chats with her briefly. After her appointment, Nelly goes to the pharmacy to fill a prescription. She arrives there at 11:06 a.m. Then she makes her way back home. On the way home, around 11 a.m., she calls her cousin, whom she met earlier at the doctor's office. And Nelly definitely arrives home. She changes her clothes and puts on something more comfortable. She also takes a portion of meat out of the freezer and puts it in the kitchen to defrost. Her youngest son will be home soon. Apparently, she wants to cook lunch for herself and him. When Jens comes home from school at around 12:30 p.m., the front door is unlocked, but his mother is not there. Her cell phone, her keys, and her wallet are in the house. The only things missing are Nelly and her bike. She's supposed to work a shift at the supermarket starting at 3 p.m. Gradually, Nelly's older children, Waldemar and Natalie, and her husband, Victor, come home. In the afternoon, Victor's phone rings. Nelly's colleagues from work are calling. The 46-year-old did not show up for her shift as agreed. And the mother of 3 is usually very reliable. So Nelly's family and friends immediately set out to search for her. Her husband and children also report her missing to the police at 9:30 p.m. Unfortunately, the search is unsuccessful. Nelly does not come home overnight either. The police take the case seriously right away. There were absolutely no conflicts in Nelly's immediate environment. All of her family members have alibis for the period of her disappearance. And there is no reason to fear that the mother of 3 wanted to harm herself. Therefore, the officers assume very early on that a crime has been committed and initiate the appropriate investigative steps. On October 16th, Nelly's bicycle is found at the edge of a wooded area. It is about 20 to 30 meters off the path, somewhat hidden in the thicket. It is covered with leaves and a few twigs. The bicycle is only found because 2 mushroom pickers are out and about there. It would not have been visible from the path. The area is then searched by 100 officers. The bicycle is found only about 500 meters from the family's home. But apart from the bicycle, there is no trace of the 46-year-old in the woods. The bicycle has a flat tire at the front. One of the detectives mentions a punctured tire. The police believe it is possible that someone is responsible for this and that the flat tire may have been part of a plan. In other words, someone deliberately tampered with the tire so that Nelly would need help, allowing the saboteur to play the rescuer and then overpower her. Like so much else in this case, however, this is unfortunately pure speculation. To this day, no one knows why Nelly might have been riding her bike toward the forest, which route she took there, and, above all, what exactly happened to her there. A witness claims to have seen two cars driving in that direction at noon on October 14th. One of them had a bicycle in the trunk. Another car is said to have been driving behind it. Whether this is true and whether it has anything to do with the case remains unclear to this day. The police suspect that Nelly must have left the house between 11:30 a.m. and 12:10 p.m. At the time, there were smoking benches in the woods where her bicycle was found. Nelly is said to have gone there often to relax and smoke secretly. Her family knew nothing about this, at least not about the smoking. However, a pack of cigarettes was found in her handbag at home. Of course, theoretically, she could have had a second pack with her or simply taken a cigarette out. Nevertheless, this theory makes it somewhat less likely that Nelly went there to smoke. But perhaps Nelly left the house for a very specific reason, for example, to go on a date. However, despite extensive investigations, the police have no evidence to support this. Before her disappearance, no calls or messages were received on her cell phone or the family's landline. However, it is assumed that Nelly really left her house of her own accord on her bike. This is because she was seen by a witness on her way to the forest. It is only one person, and she did not report to the police until weeks later, but it is something. The witness claims to have seen Nelly on her bike at around 12:15 p.m. The witness is considered credible because she can describe Nelly's jacket in detail. She's wearing a sports jacket belonging to one of her sons, who plays for the local soccer club. In the first 3 weeks after Nelly's disappearance, the police receive a good 20 tips. The police also put up search posters in the city and surrounding towns and in the forest area where her bicycle was found. Unfortunately, the disappearance of the mother of 3 remains a mystery. At times, rumors surface that Nelly's disappearance could have something to do with her doctor's appointment. Perhaps the 46-year-old had been diagnosed with a serious illness that drove her to despair. But that is not the case. Her doctor later clarifies this. In January 2012, the special commission investigating Nelly Graf's disappearance is disbanded. The family continues to search tirelessly for their wife and mother. But the professional investigators have simply run out of leads. Soon, however, a new lead will be found. One that turns the missing person case into a murder case. On February 9, 2012, the body of missing person Nelly Graf is found. A farmer discovers the body while walking his dog. The dog runs ahead into the undergrowth. To the side of the path is a narrow strip of forest with a dip, behind which lies a field. The farmer follows his dog and comes across the body of 46-year-old Nelly Graf. Her mouth and eyes are taped shut with duct tape, her hands bound with cable ties. She's lying in the hollow between the forest and the field. The body is found about 7 kilometers from where her bicycle was found. Nelly's clothes and jewelry are still on the body. The body is partially skeletonized, but the cause of death can still be determined. Several stab wounds in the upper body, or, to be more precise, multiple stab wounds with internal bleeding and resulting cardiac arrest. After Nelly was already dead, her throat was also slit. Whoever is responsible for her death clearly wanted to be sure and acted with extreme violence. Investigators assume that the perpetrator must have had very good local knowledge. He must have driven up in a car, and there were hardly any access roads to the path. Individual witnesses later reported seeing a car driving into the forest on the night of October 14th to 15th and coming out again with its headlights off. The police were able to identify 2 cars reported by witnesses and question the vehicle owners. Both can be ruled out as suspects. A witness also reported that the cornfield where Nelly's body was found had been harvested on October 15th. The workers and farmers responsible were questioned but did not make any notable observations about the matter. The police checked all vehicles that were deregistered in the district after October 2011. They hoped that the perpetrator might have wanted to get rid of his car to cover his tracks. Unfortunately, this approach came to nothing. After the body was found, the Nelly Graf case was featured on a television program. Unfortunately, however, the broadcast did not provide any decisive clues. Nelly's family is still at a loss today. In an interview, her husband Victor says that the family often sat together and wondered who could have committed the crime. According to her son Waldemar, they all became very suspicious of other people during this time. And that is only too understandable. Especially since, to this day, no one knows who kidnapped and so cruelly murdered the then 46-year-old woman. In broad daylight, in the middle of a quiet residential area in a small German town, the recovery of Nelly Graf's body was very complex. Part of the earth had to be removed because the ground was frozen due to the prevailing temperatures. But the effort was well worth it for the forensic team. On the one hand, they found fiber traces that are consistent with fibers from car seats. Above all, however, 2 DNA traces were secured from Nelly Graf's body. Male DNA was found on her body, which could be reconstructed into a complete profile. It is believed to have come from the perpetrator. It is thought to be skin flakes. The DNA is not stored in the police database. But if the perpetrator commits another crime, he could be convicted by a DNA match. Particularly puzzling is the fact that a second female DNA trace was found on the torn edge of the duct tape. Unfortunately, it is less clear than the male trace, and the fragments are not sufficient for a complete profile. Nevertheless, it can still be used to rule out possible suspects, as can the complete male DNA. Around 6,000 men from the area voluntarily take part in a mass test to further narrow down the circle of suspects. All of Nelly's family and friends can also be checked again using DNA profiles and definitively ruled out as perpetrators. However, because the individuals to whom these DNA traces belong are still missing, those responsible have not yet been caught. In July 2013, the homicide squad investigating the Nelly Graf case is disbanded. Unfortunately, the case remains a cold case to this day. The police largely rule out a relationship-related crime. Instead, they suspect a stranger who either observed Nelly beforehand or even chose her as a completely random victim. At the same time, they assume that the perpetrator planned their crime meticulously. Why Nelly Graf was targeted is completely unclear. The same goes for the question of why she left on her bike on October 14th without her keys, wallet, or cell phone. Did she perhaps want to quickly buy something for lunch with the cash she had withdrawn earlier and think that Jens would already be home when she returned? Or did she really want to ride to the edge of the forest for a quick cigarette? If so, was the perpetrator lying in wait for her somewhere along the way? Or are her leaving the house and her abduction somehow directly related? The Nelly Graf case is certainly one of the most mysterious current cases in Germany. Despite DNA evidence, the murderer of the mother of 3 has been on the run for 14 years. As you probably know, there is no statute of limitations for murder. But, as the police emphasize in the Nelly Graf case, there is for aiding and abetting murder. So, if there is anyone who helped the perpetrator in any way during the crime, that person would no longer have to fear legal consequences. Nor would a potential accomplice or confidant. Instead, that person could ease their conscience and give Nelly Graf's children and husband the certainty they deserve. And all this, as I said, without any legal risks. I really hope that anyone who may have known something will pluck up the courage to come forward. Of course, this cannot be easy and also involves personal risks. But it is Nelly's family who have lost much more than any informant could ever lose. And for that reason alone, anyone with any information should report it to the police immediately. 2 of Nelly Graf's 3 children have now become parents themselves. She would certainly have loved to meet her grandchildren and support her children. Instead, she was brutally torn from life for reasons that remain completely unclear. At this point, I would like to express my condolences to the family once again, and I am really keeping my fingers crossed that the case will be solved soon. Because there is no question that it can be solved. If you like, please share this video with your friends and acquaintances. To help the video get recommended to more people, feel free to like it or write a comment to boost the algorithm. Especially with unsolved cases like this, I would be happy if as many people as possible heard about it. Thank you for your support and for watching. Other than that, there's not much else to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching the video, and hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, bye everyone.